Welcome back, Mando.
Oh, greetings, Bucketheads. Mevartigar. Welcome to our 268th Marvelous Mayhem on Mandalore episode of Mandovision. I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here today. Make sure you're reaching out to us on the socials. We are at Mando_Vision on Twitter /X and Instagram. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, we are back. We are resuming our coverage of the final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I feel like we've been interrupted quite a bit. It feels like it's taken a while to get through this fairly short season of episodes. But Star Wars is the gift that keeps on giving, friends. And so when they giveth, we taketh away the Clone Wars recaps that we do. So that's okay, because now we're back. We're going to be filling the void of your Star Wars life now with the final 4 episodes of Season 7 here. And if you're a longtime listener to the podcast, you'll know that I did talk about these episodes, not in great detail when they first aired, because I knew we would get to this day, and because, mostly because I wanted to do like what we're doing with the entire Star Wars, the Clone Wars rewatch series, is give it a little time, let it put a little age on itself, and see how we connect to more Star Wars things. And since this show aired, several new things have come out to connect back to these episodes that are only a couple years old. So it is an interesting time to rewatch this massive arc that wraps up not only Star Wars: The Clone Wars and leads us directly into Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, but it also sets the table for a lot of the Mandalorian goodness that we have to look forward to in Rebels and in The Mandalorian itself with Din Djarin and everybody. Like, this helps set the tone. This sets the table. This also... these episodes also launch Maul on his new path, and where we will find him lurking in the background, in the shadows, during the rise of the Empire. So a lot to kind of get going here. Like a lot of things get set in motion by these final acts. And I sort of misspoke a little bit by saying how these episodes lead into Episode 3. Not so fast, my friends. Technically, these episodes take place right in the jump. I mean, the first half of this episode is maybe before Episode 3, and then it's like Episode 3 is happening as these events are taking place concurrently. So keep that in mind, as we're watching these episodes, because we're there. We've sort of reached the goal of filling in the era of the Clone Wars between episodes 2 and 3. We've seen Anakin grow into this great Jedi war hero with a touch of arrogance and hubris about him, and we see that on full display in this episode. We again are reminded in this episode of the sort of similar paths that Anakin and Obi-Wan found themselves on at one point. One chose to go one way and the other chose to go another direction. We'll talk about that as we get to it. It's, again, if you know the podcast, I've talked about this before. But it's nice to be reminded of it as we get to these pivotal moments in each of these characters' journeys on the way to their ultimate destination. So you have that to look forward to. We're going to get into it. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about this first of the final 4 episodes of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. But on a side note, I did want to mention, like many other people in America, across the globe, it seems like, I did make the time to head out to the movie theaters and see Deadpool and Wolverine. And listen, I've tried very hard to keep other elements of pop culture out of the Mandovision podcast. But I do want to say very, very briefly that this movie is a ton of fun. It's a great time. You will not regret going if for some reason you have not gone already. You will have a blast. It exceeded expectations on so many levels for me, and it gave me everything it was everything I expected it to be. But it was so much more in the sense that I did not expect it to be such a love letter to the 20th Century Fox era of superhero movies. And again, we can tie that together because 20th Century Fox famously put out Star Wars back in the day. I missed that 20th Century Fox fanfare when we pull up the movies on streaming now. Luckily, I still have it available on the DVDs. But yeah. So head out there. You might be surprised by some of the stuff you get out of this movie. I don't want to say it's like overtly emotional, but like they do some things. They make you feel a little bit. You know, it's not just all the ha-has and the bloody bloods and the schnickety schnicks. No. There's more going on. Check it out. It's a good time. And hit me up on the socials and tell me your favorite part of Deadpool and Wolverine, because I had quite a few, and I'd love to talk about it with you guys at some point. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into our episode particulars for this beginning of the end of the Clone Wars. This is Star Wars: The Clone Wars Season 7, Episode 9, Old Friends Not Forgotten. Original air date April 17th, 2020. And it is, not surprisingly, that it is written by Dave Filoni. Directed by Saul Ruiz. Our primary cast for this week, of course, Tom Kane is our narrator and Admiral Yularen. Ashley Eckstein is Ahsoka Tano. Julian Holloway is Almec. Matt Lanter is Anakin Skywalker. Matthew Wood is the Battle Droids. Katie Sackhoff is Bo-Katan. D. Bradley Baker, the Clone Troopers, and Commander Rex. Ray Stevenson, the late great, as Gar Saxon. Sam Witwer is Maul. James Arnold Taylor is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Vanessa Marshall, Rook Cast. Donald Faison is the Tactical Droid. And Sharmila Devar is Ursa Wren. So, let's go ahead and get our plot out of the way. Ahsoka contacts Anakin and Obi-Wan, who must decide whether to help her pursue Maul on Mandalore or defend Coruscant. Oh, we know. We know. This episode does not contain a Jedi fortune cookie because, in essence, this 4-part episode is basically a 90-minute movie, and we get the cinematic treatment right off the jump with the Lucasfilm Limited, the Star Wars, the Clone Wars, the familiar font line, the main music. All of it's right there to tell us that we are going to have, like I said, a cinematic experience explode in front of our eyeballs for the next 27 minutes. And again, you can link them all together and make a wonderful 90-minute movie. And honestly, I think that is honestly one of the best ways to watch it. But as is the nature of this show, we follow the episode guide and we break them down into their parts, as it were. All right. There's a couple of interesting people. As I read off the cast list, you obviously heard names that are familiar to new fans and old fans alike. We mentioned Ursa Wren, obviously a connection to Sabine, and we get to in Rebels. One of the benefits of getting to tell this season, this final season later on, is they were able to go back in and redo a few things and add some characters, right? I suspect, I have not confirmed, but I do suspect Gar Saxon maybe wasn't originally in this, but he was in the Son of Dathomir comic book series that helped fill the void. So, why not give him some more exposure? And again, Ray Stevenson, why not? Let's do it. But so one of the benefits of doing it later was that you're able to fill it in a little bit more. I mentioned the Son of Dathomir because that is, as of this publication date of the podcast, is still in unproduced episodes of the series. You can read the comic books through Dark Horse, which again is now through Marvel, but it is Darth Maul, the Son of Dathomir comic book series, 4 issues. Helps fill in some of the gaps between when we last saw him in the show to when we get to hear his escape from Sidious and from Tyrannus, and how the Mandalorians come to him, how he gets the Syndicate more under his thumb. A lot of stuff in that miniseries that we get to, and I believe it also contains when he hides the Darksaber on Dathomir that will later be discovered on Rebels. So a lot of stuff in that Son of Dathomir comic book series. And then, of course, as we've talked about in the past, the Dark Disciple episodes are still unproduced as well, but they were turned into a fantastic novel. So I do recommend checking that out at some point. And again, you can pull up the rough animatic episodes on YouTube and watch them, but like I don't really see the point. Just read the comics, read that novel. Again, Star Wars, especially if you do like the audio novel of Dark Disciple with the wonderful narration, sound effects, the music, top-notch productions on those audiobooks. All right, let's go ahead, dive into the episode finally. My apologies. You know what that means, Bucketheads. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
So like we said in the opening segment here, this opens up in a very classic, old-school Star Wars way, a nod to all of us old heads out there who still remember the old Lucasfilm Limited font in that nice neon lightsaber green color that blends right on into the opening. The overture of Star Wars, the main theme, playing for us for the first time in quite some time on Star Wars The Clone Wars, I think since the movie. And, again, you get those nostalgic feels, at least I do, as an old head of the Star Wars universe. And it just hits, and it sets a tone immediately for what kind of experience you are in for. Like it's basically saying, buckle up or strap on your helmet and get ready because it's about to get real. And that is what we open up with. We get our narration, Tom Kane delivering the goods once again, setting the table for where we are. Once again, we find Anakin and Obi-Wan in trouble on a battle in the Outer Rim. And Obi-Wan coming to Commander Cody's aid, and Anakin ultimately coming to Cody and Obi-Wan's aid to help save the day. Visually, we see the new models, right? We see the new Obi-Wan model. We see the new Anakin model to, again, bring us to that moment right before, mere moments, basically, before the beginning of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, and where we will find them in their Jedi Starfighters engaging the forces of General Grievous above Coruscant. And it looks good. It looks really cool. Like the technological advances they've made since the show originally ended back in the early, was it 2012, 2014, something like that. It's still in line with everything that came before it, but there is sort of a darker cinematic quality to the animation, in my opinion. But getting to see Obi-Wan in sort of that more familiar garb, Anakin in his more familiar garb, just delightful. Really, really cool. Really cool moment to see that sort of transition there. Like is a strong word, but again, we see Anakin sort of at the top of his game because, again, when you're at the very tippy top, the steeper the fall. And we all know that Anakin is about to come tumbling down the mountain that he has ascended to at this very beginning point here. He's cocky. He's standing in the line of fire, just moving his head left and right to avoid the blasters. He shows no fear to the forces of the Separatist battle droid army, and he has a plan, and it's a cool plan. I like it. You see that arrogance, that sort of hubris of Anakin, and you know that this is bad tidings for him. But it's a good plan. I love how he lures out the tactical droid and pulls him out with the Force to sever his droid head from his droid body. I loved all of that. I loved seeing Rex and the 501st come out front of the bridge with their jetpacks and begin bombing on the Separatist forces to Obi-Wan and Cody's sort of amazement / dismay. It's again, you're seeing Anakin at the pinnacle. This is him at the top, and he's about to begin to slide down because that battle over Coruscant begins to take a dark turn with the demise of Dooku at his hands. Topic for another day, though. As this battle comes to a swift resolution, thanks to Anakin and the 501st, Yularen summons them back to the ship because they've received an urgent communication from someone named Fulcrum. And it's not Saw Gerrera, as speculated by Anakin and Obi-Wan. No, not so fast, my friends. It is, of course, Ahsoka Tano with Lady Bo-Katan calling for help, because since we last saw Ahsoka on Obadiah, she is now with the Mandalorians, and they have been tracking Maul for quite some time, as the Mandalorians, led by Bo-Katan, are planning to take their world back from Maul and his criminal syndicate, and get the Mandalorians that have followed him out of there too. They're like, this is enough of this. That's what Bo-Katan says. So Lady Bo-Katan is there to sort of pitch the idea of a joint invasion by her forces, which are not numerous enough to single-handedly fight Maul's forces in Sundari. So she needs the help of the Republic. She comes to the Republic knowing that this is not her first choice. This is not something she would like to be doing, but has no other alternative. And it sounds a little bit like maybe Ahsoka has talked her into it to a degree, that this is the route to go, to ask, formally for aid. And it's something that Obi-Wan wants to do properly, right? He wants to run it past the Council, the Jedi Council, that is. And it's an interesting tack, because getting Maul, I would think, would be fairly important, especially because at this point, the Jedi are still not in a position where they know who the Sith Lord is, right? The veil of the dark side has fallen. Mace Windu has commented that the Jedi no longer have the full faculties of their abilities anymore. They can no longer use the Force to its fullest capacity. Like, they are diminished in some sense. So to me, getting Maul should be a priority. It should be like something that Obi-Wan can just be like, "Yep, let's go." But of course, the political manipulations of Sidious are in play, and you have to wonder if the invasion above Coruscant wasn't timed specifically to counter what Sidious possibly foresaw with his former apprentice and the plan/trap that Maul was attempting to have Kenobi walk into. I think Sidious would know that Kenobi is a key ingredient to aiding Anakin's journey to the dark side, his fall to the dark side, and everything that needs to happen. Well, let's phrase that better. Everything that Sidious needs to have happen, revolves around the relationships that Anakin has with Padme, with Obi-Wan. So for Obi-Wan to get drawn away to go to deal with Maul probably doesn't work for Sidious. So I wonder if, and I don't know if there's been any material published to kind of corroborate this like sort of working theory that I have. Again, Sidious, good at anticipation. That was one of his big strengths. So I would not be surprised if the battle over Coruscant was to specifically counter what Maul was doing on Mandalore. So again, Obi-Wan's being very much by the book, wants to talk to the Council, wants to get permission. I love it's coming up later. At this point, Bo goes away in a huff. Obi-Wan goes to make the communication. And this is when we get to those nice moments between Anakin and Ahsoka, former student and master, the reunion with the 501st, the Ahsoka painted helmets, Anakin returning her lightsabers. All these things are super cool, super awesome moments, and just kind of show the importance that character has had in the Clone Wars, the impact she's made with the clones themselves, the level of respect that they hold for her. It's all awesome, and if it gets you in the heartstrings a little bit, that's cool. I think that's what it's designed for. But it's really there to show us how much they care for their Jedi commander. And I think that's something that in the sort of rush of everything to do, that they have to do in Episode 3, when Order 66 is issued, we don't know the relationship that a lot of the commanders and generals, the Jedis, have with their troops. We know the relationship that Anakin has with Rex, and we know the relationship that Ahsoka has with Rex in the 501st. And it seems to be very different than many of the other Jedi, the more traditional Jedi with their inability or unwillingness to form attachment. Anakin does not have that problem, so he gets attached. He forms a relationship with Rex that is more than just captain and general. It borders on a friendship, a legitimate one, and more so for Ahsoka, who's been down there with the troops even more so than Anakin has. But I would imagine it is quite a different relationship than Obi-Wan has with Cody, and that the other Jedis have with each of their captains and commanders and clone troopers in general. Again, even if it's a favorable one, it's not going to be to the same level of Anakin, because Anakin is all about forging those attachments that get him into so much trouble down the road. So a really neat moment. When the alarms go off, the Battle of Coruscant has begun, and it's time to go. And Obi-Wan is perfectly willing to not help Mandalore. There was a moment before Bo-Katan stormed off that I do want to talk about. That kind of bleeds into this one here too, because Obi-Wan kind of gets it from two different directions at two different times in this episode. At the first face-to-face meeting with Ahsoka and Bo, Bo hits him square between the eyes, talking about Satine and how she believed that he had feelings for her, and why would he choose to not help Mandalore and avenge the person that murdered her right in front of him. Obi-Wan, being very Obi-Wan, says that he cannot let his feelings cloud his judgment. And Anakin kind of gives him this look. And again, it's a reminder that at one point, Obi-Wan trod on a similar path that Anakin did with his relationship with Padme. But Obi-Wan ultimately chose the Jedi over emotion and attachment and this relationship with the ruler of Mandalore. Anakin went the other direction. Anakin very much wants to believe that he makes the best decisions, but he is definitely guided by his emotions. To him, they are a strength. But, as we all know, they are also something to easily be manipulated by the Sith. So I love that compare and contrast between Obi-Wan and Anakin. I'd love for one day for them to fill in the story of what happened so many years ago between Satine and Obi-Wan. I mean, more than just the fan fiction that exists out there on the internet. I'd actually like to have the canon story of that at some point. Why they don't tell that story is still beyond me, especially in the intervening years. We've gotten so much of Obi-Wan's time between 3 and 4 filled in. Why can't we get the time before Episode 1 a little bit more fleshed out? Unless that exists out there and I've just missed it. I know there are a couple books about a young Obi-Wan out there, but do they tell the story of Satine? I to my knowledge, they don't. But maybe there's one I've missed or has fallen through the cracks. And then the second time that Obi-Wan's going to get punched right in the mouth, this time by Ahsoka, is when he's telling them that they're not going to help, that the Republic forces have to rally at Coruscant. The invasion has begun, and it's time to save the Chancellor. And Ahsoka throws it right in his face that this is political, and it's not about doing the right thing. It's about going to the aid of the Chancellor, not the people in the galaxy who need them the most. It is showing that lesson that Ahsoka learned in her time with the Martez sisters. And so again, knock that arc all you want. It gave Ahsoka perspective on how others in the galaxy view the Jedi, and how it seems to so many that the Jedi are just disconnected from the everyday people that they are supposed to be the guardians and protectors of, instead of the guardians and protectors of bureaucracy and policy, which they have become. So I love that she throws that in Obi-Wan's face, and he's even like, that's not fair. And she's like, I'm not trying to be. And I love that. I think that's fantastic and very accurate. and it's time to kind of put the Jedi on the spot. Again, too little too late, honestly, but I like that Ahsoka now has that perspective to see just how far off the track the Jedi have gotten. And I think at this point she still thinks there's time to right the ship, but we know what lurks in the near future for the Jedi, and it ain't good. So this is when Anakin presents his plan to split up the 501st, put it. I think they're going to give Rex a little bit of a field promotion so he can be a commander, and he takes charge of that division. Ahsoka goes as an advisor so that they can assist Bo-Katan's forces, and we get the invasion of Mandalore right here. Yes, they're breaking treaties, they're doing all kinds of things, but hey, let's be honest. Almec is a puppet of a not legitimate government, and it's time for them to go. So hundreds of years of treaties be darned. And this is when the next wave of action begins in the episode, and it's great. We got Mandalorians on Mandalorians, we got clones on Mandalorians, Gar Saxon, Ursa Wren. We got Rook Cast. We didn't even talk about Rook Cast initially, a sort of nod to the old West End games. Jodo Cast character who was your Boba Fett stand-in after everyone thought he died in the Sarlacc, but and who they would bring into the comic books in Dark Horse and give a rivalry to with Boba Fett. It was great stuff. Check out Jodo Cast, good times. But yeah, like I said, a little wink to that character as sort of a 1A and 1B to Gar Saxon. Great stuff. Love all the action. It's really good. But we find out, and again, Almec sort of teases it that this was all kind of foreseen by Maul, but Bo-Katan brought the wrong Jedi here, and that's ultimately what we find out at the very end of the episode, as in the Undercity, a trap has been sprung for the Jedi, but not the Jedi that Maul was hoping to ensnare, because we all know he wanted Kenobi, but what he got was Ahsoka Tano, because again, Obi-Wan and Anakin had to go rush off to save the Chancellor. So did Palpatine orchestrate that? That's my working theory. I've not seen much to confirm nor deny it, but maybe it's out there. Again, there's a lot of content that I have lost track of, and so if you know, hit me up and let me know. But that's basically where we end this episode. Maul makes his appearance finally after his trap has been sprung, but he caught the wrong Jedi in it. But that doesn't mean he can't find an angle here. And that is where we're going to leave this episode, which is a banging 10-bucket episode. Surprise, surprise. All right, that's all I got for this one. It's just great. The action is awesome. The battle stuff, it's Mandalorian on Mandalorian. The battle in Sundari, all the jetpacks, the blasters, all of it. And next week we get to add more lightsaber fun to it. I didn't mention during the first part of the invasion here, as the ships are in coming down from orbit into the skies above Sundari, the action going on in the skies of Mandalore. Particularly with Ahsoka jumping from gunship to gunship and disabling and destroying Mandalorian jetpacks along the way. It's awesome. It's really, really cool. So much like Anakin at the beginning of the episode, we are also getting like an Ahsoka as sort of like the height of her game. And in a couple episodes, we talked about how this sort of ties into some of the newer content. So we'll spend more time talking about it a little bit later when we get to it. But obviously, in 2022, we've got the Tales of the Jedi episodes. 3 episodes for Ahsoka, 3 for Count Dooku himself. But we're going to tie in an episode, the Practice Makes Perfect episode, and we'll see. We'll talk about that more later. But yeah, it's one of the reasons why we waited to kind of do this now, as opposed to when the episodes first came out in 2020, was so that we had a little bit more context. And I'm here about that. I'm here for that all day, every day. All right, Bucketheads, let's get out of here. Again, 10-bucket episode. Can next episode keep it up? Odds are good, but let's wait and see. All right? So reach out to me on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram. Email this show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Another reminder to make sure you're liking, subscribing, following, and sharing this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If you are able, 5-star reviews are so insanely helpful. They are the best. This is the Mandavision Podcast. I am your host, Narguy Tom. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being awesome Star Wars fans. As always, you guys are the best. And we will be back next week to continue our basically our sound like a seal there for a second, friends. Oh my goodness. But yeah, this is the end of the Clone Wars. We're coming to an end of an era in Mandavision podcasting as well, because we have been documenting 7 seasons of this show. Kind of crazy. But yeah, end of an era here on the podcast as well. All right, friends, like I said, we'll be back next week. Go out there, be great Star Wars fans. Be kind, supportive, and respectful of others who maybe don't agree with us. But we're better than that. We don't get all uppity. We don't gatekeep. We're awesome that way. All right, Bucketheads, I'll talk to you soon. Remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.